In this video, we're going to look at strings, and we're going to look at specific things we can do with strings using functions and special characters in order to manipulate these strings. So I've already started out with a variable called text. I've put a string literal in that text. I've assigned that to text. We're printing out the variable text, and I've already run that, and you can see that it's printing out here. So the first thing we want to look at is, let's say that we want to put some of these words on a different line. Now we could very easily break this variable up, set up a new variable, print two different times, but Python lets us use a character slash and n, and when we run that, it's actually going to do a hard return at this point here and put this on a different line. So our next thing is, let's say that we want to put quotation marks in our string. We know that if we add a new quotation mark here and we try to run it, we're going to get an error because it doesn't understand what all of this is after the quotation marks. So if we want to add quotation marks, let's say around long, the way we're going to do that is we're going to add a slash in front of it, each quotation mark, and then Python will ignore the quotation marks as far as part of the program and actually will print out the quotation marks. So the next thing we want to look at are methods that we can use with strings. Now, we're not going to go over all the methods because there's a bunch of them, but we're going to go over some ones that are very useful in programming. So the first one we're going to look at is capitalization, and the way we use these methods is after we go to call our variable, we're going to put a period and then whatever the name of our method is. So the first one we're going to look at is capitalize. And then after we name the method, we're going to put two more parentheses here. And we don't need to put anything in these parentheses. And we're going to run that. And notice that it capitalizes the first letter of our string, but it also makes all the other letters lowercase. So we can see our H is capitalized and everything else in the string is lowercase. Now from that, you can go ahead and guess that our next one is going to be lowercase, and the way we do that is lower, and we'll run that, and every letter in the variable is lowercase. We also have an upper, and now they're all uppercase. We can test to see whether the string is uppercase or lowercase by adding is in front of upper. So it's going to test whether this is all uppercase, and it's going to give us a false because it's not all uppercase. We can also do the same with lowercase, and again it will give us false because it's not all lowercase. We got some uppercase letters in here. Now we can combine some of these methods. So for instance, we're going to do an is upper, but before that we're going to add upper. So what we have here is we have the upper method and then we have is upper. So it's going to first turn it all uppercase and then it's going to test for that. When we have it after a method after another method, is testing what happens before that. It's not going back. This second method here is not going back and testing this. So we should get true with that. Another thing we can do with strings is we can output the length of a string by len for length and then putting the variable in parentheses, and that's going to tell us how many characters we have in our string. The next thing we can do is find out a position of a particular letter. Now, one thing you have to understand is we haven't gotten to index yet, but when Python counts, it's going to start with 0. So, for instance, we'll go ahead and run one of these and then I'll explain it to you. So we're going to look for the letter that's in the third position, and we get E. Now when I say third position, it starts at 0. So the H is 0, the the O is 1, W is 2, E is 3. So E is actually the fourth position if you go 1, 2, 3, 4. But if you start at 0, 1, 2, 3, E is there. Let's test out another one here. Let's say, what is in index 7? And it's nothing because it's a space. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and our space is 7. We can kind of work backwards with that by using .index, and we're going to find an index of a particular letter. So we're going to do .index parentheses, and then we also need quotation marks and then whatever we're looking for. So for instance, let's look for E. Now notice there's multiple E's in here. It's going to find the first one. So the first one is at index 3. If we look for L, lowercase l, it's going to give us an error because there are no lowercase l's in our string. However, if we look for an uppercase L, it will return 8 because of our uppercase L and long. Now we can also put in full words like IT, and it's going to return the index of where that starts. So that I is at index 13. It's going to tell us when that starts. We also can replace parts of our text, and the way we do that is replace, open parentheses, and now we need to give it two parameters. We need to give it what we want to replace. So for instance, I want to replace IT, comma, and then what we want to replace it with. We're going to replace it with IT but with a lowercase t. And notice that it prints it out exactly how it has it, including our uppercase L, but this time our T is lowercase, just like we set it here. A couple more we can play around with here. One thing you want to do when you're going through the list, you can just Google a list of methods that you can use with strings. You do want to try them because some of them won't work exactly how you might think they would work at face value. So an example of that is text is alpha. Now by definition, this one is going to return true if all the characters in the string are in the alphabet. And at face value, you would expect that to return true with what we're using. However, it will return false because we have spaces, and spaces are not on the alphabet. So if we remove our spaces it will now return true. So I encourage you to go look these up and find out everything that you can do with strings in Python.